Hello and welcome back. If you are new here, my name is Ricky. On this channel, we explore Vedic astrology in a clear, grounded, and practical way without fear-based language, exaggeration, or shortcuts. Today's video is about Saturn, also known as Shani in Vedic astrology. Saturn is one of the most misunderstood planets in astrology. It is also one of the most important. This video is intentionally long because Saturn cannot be understood in a short explanation. If you stay with this video, your entire relationship with Saturn will change. Let me start with a foundational truth. Saturn is not here to punish you. Saturn is here to mature you. Saturn represents time, responsibility, structure, and consequence. It governs reality, not comfort. And this is why Saturn often feels heavy. In Vedic astrology, Saturn is associated with karma, but karma does not mean punishment. Karma means cause and effect. It means that actions, patterns, and choices create momentum over time. Saturn represents accumulated momentum. It brings results when results are due. This is why Saturn is slow. This is why Saturn delays. This is why Saturn insists on effort. Saturn does not respond to desire. Saturn responds to consistency. Many people fear Saturn because Saturn removes illusions. It strips away shortcuts. It exposes weak foundations. But Saturn does not destroy for no reason. Saturn restructures what is unsustainable. If something in your life collapses under Saturn, it was not stable to begin with. Saturn reveals truth through pressure. Let's talk about delay because this is one of Saturn's most misunderstood qualities. Saturn delays outcomes not to deny fulfillment, but to ensure readiness. Saturn understands that premature success often leads to collapse, so Saturn slows things down. In relationships, Saturn may delay commitment until emotional maturity develops. In career, Saturn may delay recognition until competence is real. In identity, Saturn may delay confidence until self-respect is earned. Saturn's delays are protective, even when they feel frustrating. Now let's talk about Saturn in the birth chart. Where Saturn is placed shows where life requires effort. It shows where discipline must be learned. It shows where shortcuts fail. This area of life often feels heavy early on, but over time it becomes a source of strength. Saturn does not reward talent alone. Saturn rewards work. This is why Saturn's success often comes later in life, not because Saturn is cruel, but because Saturn values depth. Saturn behaves differently at different life stages. In childhood and early adulthood, Saturn feels restrictive. In midlife, Saturn feels instructional. In later life, Saturn often becomes supportive. This is why older people often understand Saturn better. They have lived it. Now let's talk about Saturn and psychology. Saturn governs fear, anxiety, self-doubt, and insecurity. But Saturn does not create fear. Saturn reveals fear that already exists. Saturn exposes avoidance. It exposes procrastination. It exposes denial, and it forces confrontation with reality. This is why Saturn periods often coincide with identity shifts. You are asked to take responsibility for yourself. External validation fades. Internal authority must develop. Let's now talk about Saturn by house conceptually. Saturn in any house demands maturity in that area. In career-related houses, Saturn demands professional integrity. In relationship houses, Saturn demands emotional responsibility. In inner houses, Saturn demands psychological resilience. Saturn does not remove fulfillment. Saturn delays it until structure exists. Now let's talk about Saturn by sign, conceptually. Saturn expresses differently depending on the sign it occupies. In discipline signs, Saturn feels familiar. In emotional or impulsive signs, Saturn feels more challenging. But regardless of sign, Saturn demands alignment with reality. Saturn does not care about intention without action. It cares about what you consistently do. Another key Saturn theme is boundaries. Saturn governs limits. Healthy limits create stability. Unhealthy limits create restriction. Saturn teaches the difference. People who lack boundaries often suffer more under Saturn. People who develop boundaries thrive. Saturn also governs integrity. Integrity means alignment between values and actions. Saturn rewards integrity. Saturn challenges self-deception. This is why Saturn periods often feel uncomfortable. They force honesty, not with others, but with yourself. Now let's talk about Saturn dashas or Saturn planetary periods. When Saturn's dasha is active, life becomes serious, responsibility increases, time feels heavier, results depend on effort and discipline. Saturn dashas often reduce distractions, social circles shrink, external rewards slow, but inner growth accelerates. This is not punishment. This is training. Saturn dashas are often lonely because Saturn teaches self-reliance. It removes dependency. It strengthens inner authority. Now let's talk about Saturn transits, especially Sadhasati. Sadhasati occurs when Saturn transits the moon sign and surrounding signs. This period lasts approximately 7.5 years. Sadhasati is feared because it affects the mind. It exposes emotional coping patterns. It challenges emotional avoidance. It demands maturity. Sadhasati is not the same for everyone. Its impact depends on the condition of Saturn and the moon in the birth chart. This is why personalized analysis matters. During Sadhasati, external life may slow down, but inner growth intensifies. Old emotional patterns surface. New emotional strength develops. Saturn also governs time itself. It reminds us that growth is seasonal. Some periods are for building, some are for waiting, some are for harvesting. Saturn teaches patience. People who align with Saturn often become mentors later in life. They carry wisdom earned through experience. They understand endurance. They understand limits. They understand responsibility. Now let's address a major myth. Saturn is not always negative. A well-placed Saturn can bring stability, longevity, authority, respect. Saturn can become a pillar in the chart. Saturn gives results that last. Jupiter gives expansion. Venus gives pleasure. Saturn gives permanence. Saturn tests sincerity. If something is aligned, Saturn supports it. If something is misaligned, Saturn challenges it. This is why Saturn often marks turning points, career redirection, relationship restructuring, identity refinement. Saturn corrects direction. One of the healthiest ways to work with Saturn is acceptance. Acceptance of effort, acceptance of time, acceptance of responsibility. Resistance creates suffering. Acceptance creates growth. Saturn does not demand perfection. Saturn demands consistency. If Saturn is active in your life right now, this is not a punishment. It is an invitation to slow down, to build properly, to mature. As we continue this series, Saturn will appear again and again. Understanding Saturn early will make everything else easier to interpret. If this video helped deepen your understanding of Saturn, I invite you to comment below. You can share where Saturn is placed in your chart or what Saturn themes you are experiencing right now. Engaging with the content helps the channel grow and helps guide future videos. Now that we have explored Saturn psychologically and astrologically, we need to look at Saturn from another essential perspective. Saturn in Vedic astrology cannot be fully understood without understanding Shani in Hindu mythology. The mythology does not contradict astrology, it explains it symbolically. In Hindu tradition, planets are not just physical bodies, They are cosmic intelligences. Each graha represents a function of universal law. Shani represents karma, justice, and time. This is why Shani is both feared and respected. Shani is traditionally known as the son of Surya, the sun. This relationship itself is deeply symbolic. Surya represents light, vitality, ego, and authority. Shani represents shadow, discipline, humility, and consequence. In many stories, Shani and Surya have a strained relationship. This is not a family drama, it is a cosmic lesson. The sun represents immediate recognition. Saturn represents delayed consequence. The sun shines instantly. Saturn reveals truth over time. One of the most well-known stories about Shani involves his gaze, or drishti. It is said that Shani's gaze brings hardship and suffering, but this is often misunderstood. Shani's gaze does not cause destruction. Shani's gaze reveals truth. Anything that cannot withstand truth collapses. Anything aligned with truth survives. This is why Shani is associated with fear. Truth is uncomfortable. Reality strips illusions. In mythology, even the gods respect Shani. There are stories where kings, sages, and even deities experience difficulty under Shani's influence. This is intentional. Shani does not discriminate. One famous story involves King Harishchandra, a righteous king known for truth and integrity. Even he suffered immensely under Saturn's influence. Why? Because Saturn tests attachment, not morality. Harishchandra lost wealth, status, family comfort, not because he was wrong, but because Saturn was refining his detachment. Saturn does not test goodness, Saturn tests endurance. Another important myth involves Lord Hanuman and Shani. This story is crucial for understanding Saturn. According to tradition, Shani once attempted to cast his gaze upon Hanuman. Hanuman, the embodiment of devotion and humility, asked Shani to sit upon his head. Hanuman then flew across mountains and oceans, causing Shani immense discomfort. Eventually, Shani asked for relief. Hanuman released him, and Shani granted a boon. Those who remember Hanuman with humility would be protected from the harshest effects of Saturn. This story is symbolic. It teaches that humility, service, and discipline are the antidotes to Saturn's suffering. Not fear, not avoidance, but alignment. Saturn does not respond to ego. Saturn responds to sincerity. Another powerful aspect of Shani mythology is his role as Karma Phala Datta, the giver of results. Shani does not judge intent. Shani judges action. This is why Saturn is associated with justice, but not emotional justice, cosmic justice. In many scriptures, Shani is described as slow-moving, dark, and austere. This symbolism is intentional. Shani moves slowly because karma unfolds slowly. Shani is dark because truth often lies in shadow. Shani is austere because growth requires restraint. Shani is often depicted riding a crow. The crow is a scavenger. It feeds on what is discarded. Symbolically, Shani feeds on what is unresolved. Saturn brings back unfinished business, not to punish, but to complete. Another mythological theme is Saturn's association with poverty and hardship. This does not mean Saturn creates poverty. It means Saturn removes excess. When excess is removed, what remains is essential. Saturn teaches sufficiency, not luxury, not deprivation, but enough. In Hindu philosophy, Shani is deeply connected to Dharma. Dharma is not morality, it is alignment with reality. Saturn restores Dharma by removing imbalance. This is why Saturn often disrupts false success. Success built on shortcuts, success built on exploitation, success built on ego. Saturn does not oppose success, Saturn opposes instability. Another important mythological point is that Shani grants late blessings. In many stories, those who endure Saturn with patience receive long-lasting rewards. This is why Saturn is associated with old age and wisdom. Youth seeks speed, Saturn seeks depth. Saturn also represents seva or service. In mythology, Shani respects those who serve quietly, not for praise, not for recognition, but for duty. This is why Saturn often supports people in humble professions, those who work consistently, those who show up, those who endure. In temples dedicated to Shani, you will often see offerings of oil, iron, and black cloth. These are symbolic. Oil represents smoothness through friction. Iron represents strength through pressure. Black represents absorption, not avoidance. Saturn does not want worship out of fear. Saturn wants respect through understanding. In Vedic astrology, mythology and chart interpretation work together. The myths describe how Saturn behaves. The chart shows where Saturn behaves. If Saturn is prominent in your chart, it does not mean suffering. It means responsibility. It means depth. It means long-term impact. Saturn produces teachers, mentors, builders, and stabilizers, not celebrities, not performers, but pillars. Understanding Saturn mythologically helps remove fear. It replaces fear with context. It replaces superstition with meaning. Saturn is not an enemy. Saturn is a stern teacher, a teacher who does not lie, a teacher who does not rush, a teacher who does not flatter. If Saturn is active in your life right now, you are not being punished. You are being prepared. Prepared for responsibility, prepared for stability, prepared for something that lasts. Saturn's lessons are slow, but Saturn's rewards endure. As we continue this series, you will see Saturn's influence appear again and again in transits, in dashas, in life turning points. Understanding Shani deeply will transform how you interpret astrology. If this mythological perspective helped you, I invite you to comment below. You can share whether Saturn has been a teacher in your life or what Saturn themes you recognize now. In the next video, we will explore Sage Sati in full detail. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for being here. Understanding life through the lens of Vedic astrology.